That frequency wasn't listed anywhere, yet I paid the price for trying to listen. I found the radio at a flea market just off Highway 62, about 2 hours outside of Bakersfield. It was sitting on a dusty folding table between a box of cracked vinyls and a stuffed raccoon that smelled like mildew and something worse. It wasn't the kind of thing I normally stopped for, but something about it caught my eye. Maybe it was the brushed chrome finish or the oversized dial that looked like an old submarine gauge. Or maybe it was the faint hum I swore I could hear coming from it, even though it wasn't plugged in. The vendor, a leathery old man in a torn denim vest, looked at me and said, "She still works. Picks up things the new ones don't." I didn't ask what he meant. I should have. I handed him $10 and walked off with the radio tucked under my arm. That night, I set it up on my kitchen counter, beside the sink, next to an untouched bottle of bourbon. The house was too quiet, as always. Since Sarah passed, silence had become a roommate. The kind that never pays rent, never leaves, and never lets you forget. Out of curiosity, I twisted the dial. The needle swept across the frequency band, hissing and sputtering through static, skipping over talk shows, Spanish music, and Christian sermons. It was late, just past midnight, and I wasn't expecting to hear much. But then it stopped. 103.6 FM. No station ID. No jingle. Just a low, rhythmic pulse like a heartbeat layered beneath the fuzz. Then, a voice. "Tom ... Can you hear me?" I froze. My hand hovered over the dial. The voice was female, soft and slow, like someone waking from a dream. But what stopped my breath wasn't the content. It was the tone, the inflection. I knew. That voice. "Sarah?" I whispered. No response. Just more static. I leaned in closer, heart pounding. The hum intensified, a subtle whine under the hiss. It was faint, but the voice returned. "I miss you ... I never left." I recoiled, slamming the dial with my palm. The needle jumped, the voice vanished, and all that remained was white noise. I turned it off and backed away, like the thing had teeth. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring down the hallway toward the kitchen, as if the radio might sprout legs and walk toward me. Maybe it was a trick of memory, a tired brain mistaking old recordings for a ghost. But the next night, I turned it on again, same time, same frequency, same voice, double quotes, "Tom ... please. I need to talk to you." It became a ritual. Each night, I'd pour a glass of bourbon, turn the dial to 103.6, and wait. The voice always came, sometimes whispering, sometimes weeping. She spoke of memories only Sarah and I could have shared. Our honeymoon in Maine, the way she used to. Plum when cooking, the name we picked out for a child we never had. Was I losing my mind? Probably. But even madness offers comfort when it sounds like the person you love . By the fourth night, the voice had changed. There was urgency now, panic. "They're listening," she said. "You have to be careful. Don't let them hear." "You?" I asked. "Who's listening?" She didn't answer. Instead, the lights flickered. The radio volume spiked, suddenly static roaring, like a jet engine, then cut off completely. Dead silence, until a whisper crawled through the static. "Don't open the door after the broadcast ends, no matter what you hear." I sat there, frozen, staring at the radio like it might lunge at me. And then, a knock. Not a soft tap, not a neighborly hello. This was slow, deliberate. Knock, knock. 3 perfectly spaced beats, like a metronome counting down. I turned toward the front door, heart in my throat. Another knock, this time closer. But the door wasn't just shaking from the outside. Something was inside the house. "Tom," a voice called, muffled by wood. Not Sarah's this time. It was my mother's voice. but she died in 1991. Let me in, sweetheart. I've missed you so much. I gripped the counter. My legs threatened to give. I didn't move, didn't answer. The air in the room turned heavy, pressing down on my chest like a stone slab. I said, "Let me in." Her voice grew sharper, deeper. It didn't sound like her anymore. The knocking stopped. The lights flickered once more, then steadied. The room was quiet. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. I mustered the courage to approach the door, only to find it open, just a crack. The hallway beyond was pitch black. I slammed it shut and locked every bolt. My hands trembled as I turned to the radio, which sat there innocently silent. Just before I could unplug it, the speaker crackled one last time. Sarah's voice returned, barely a whisper. "Now they know you're listening." The voice rose from the static, and it knew my name. I didn't sleep after that night. That the voice, my mother's voice, kept replaying in my head like a warped cassette. The sound of it, familiar yet wrong, scraped at something primal in me. I sat by the window until sunrise, shotgun across my lap, staring at the tree line in my front yard. Every creak of the house felt like a breath behind my neck. I kept thinking, they know I'm listening. But I couldn't stop. That night, just after midnight, I turned the radio on again. A stupid move, maybe, but it had become an obsession. Like a splinter in the mind, some part of me needed to understand what was happening. Or maybe I just missed her that much. I dialed straight to 103.6 FM, the same hissing static. But tonight, it was louder, deeper. It wasn't just white noise anymore, it was layered. There were whispers now, buried in the fuzz, flickering in and out like dying embers. And then, a voice, clear, soft. "Tom," she said it like a sigh, like she was relieved. "Sarah," I said, voice cracking. "Don't speak too loudly," she whispered. "They're listening tonight." I stared at the radio, heart racing. I could hear something else behind her words breathing. Not hers, heavier, like something standing right beside her. "Who are they?" I asked. A long pause. Then she said something that chilled me to the bone. They were never meant to hear us. Before I could ask anything else, the static surged violent, like a tidal wave of electricity. I fell back in my chair, ears ringing. The lights overhead dimmed, then went completely out. The only thing still alive was the radio dot. And then, a different voice came through. Masculine, deep, raspy, like broken glass dragged across a chalkboard. Tom Whitaker, 43 years old. Lives alone, still mourning. I felt ice spread through my veins. It was like the thing on the other end wasn't just speaking, it was reading me. Studying me, the voice continued. "Why do you think we let her through? What the hell are you?" I shouted. The answer came slowly, words dripping with malice. "We are what remains when grief opens a door too wide." The lights snapped back on, blinding me for a moment. When my eyes adjusted, I noticed something strange on the kitchen floor. My hands trembled as I reached down and picked it up. It was a photo, an old one, me and Sarah, smiling. Only the version of me in the picture had no face, just smooth, blank skin where eyes, mouth, and nose should have been. I tore it in half, heart pounding, and threw it into the trash. When I looked back at the radio, it was off. Not unplugged, not damaged, just silently waiting. Like a predator. That night, sleep didn't come easily. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of static, endless waves of it. And in that dream, I was inside the radio dot. There were rooms, hallways, all humming with electricity and whispers. I walked through one, and the walls were lined with people, or what used to be people. Their mouths moved, but I couldn't hear them. They looked at me with wide, screaming eyes. Then I saw Sarah. She reached for me, lips trembling. But when she opened her mouth to speak, her voice was buried beneath a roar of static. I woke up screaming. The worst part? When I sat up, sweating and gasping for air, I heard the same whisper from my dream. It was coming from the hallway. I grabbed the shotgun and crept toward the sound. My footsteps felt like cannon blasts on the wooden floor. At the end of the hall, I saw a soft, pulsing red light glowing under the guest room door. My hand shook. As I reached for the knob, the door creaked open slowly, revealing nothing. No red light, no whisper, just an empty room. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something etched into the back of the door, carved deep into the wood with sharp, uneven slashes. The airwaves never forget. The next morning, I tried to take the radio out of the house. I wrapped it in a towel, put it in the trunk of my truck, and drove 40 miles out into the desert. I buried it under a pile of rocks, said a prayer I didn't believe in, and left it there. That night, I drank. Heavily around 1 a.m., I walked into the kitchen to pour another and stopped dead in my tracks. The radio was back, right there on the counter, dusty, silent, waiting. The towel was still damp from the desert sand. I screamed. I threw it against the wall, then beat it with a hammer until the dial shattered and the chrome casing bent in half. I thought I was free, but then the air in the room changed. The fridge hummed louder. The light bulbs buzzed. My phone vibrated. Once, and when I checked the screen, a single notification waited for me. New voice message, 1:03 a.m. I hit play. The static came first, then the voice. Sarah, but broken, echoing like she was underwater. They won't let me go. Not until you listen. And just like that, the message deleted itself. The next night, I didn't even try to fight it. I sat in front of the shattered radio and waited. At exactly 1:03 a.m., it turned itself on. No wires, no power. And through the crackling came the voice again. You opened the door, Tom, and now it won't close. When the radio turned off, the dreams began, and I couldn't tell if I was still awake. I stopped turning the radio on, not because I thought it would help, but because it didn't matter anymore. The voices came whether I invited them or not. The frequency had sunk into me like rotten wood. My thoughts weren't mine alone anymore. They whispered behind my eyes. When I blinked. The strangest part? I started sleeping better, but that was the real curse. The dreams came soft at first, like floating through fog. I'd find myself in places that felt familiar but looked off. My childhood bedroom with no doors. A church where the pews stretched out forever. My kitchen, but submerged in black water. Every dream began with static. And somewhere, hidden in the distance, the sound of the radio, crackling, whispering, luring. The first dream that truly scared me came 3 nights after I destroyed the radio, at least physically. I woke up, or thought I did, sitting in a chair in the middle of my living room. The lights were off. The moonlight through the window was wrong, too sharp, too blue, like I was watching a memory from someone else's mind. Across from me was a man, not moving, not breathing, just sitting. His face was entirely covered in static, his features shifting like a scrambled signal. His mouth didn't move, but I heard his voice inside my head. Welcome to the broadcast room. What is this? I asked. He tilted his head. The sound of scraping metal followed. This is where they wait. The ones who listened too long. Behind him, the shadows pulsed. Shapes shifted and stretched vague outlines of people. Dozens of them, their faces blurred like a VHS stuck on rewind. All of them were whispering, "Can I leave?" I asked. He didn't respond. Instead, the dream ended with a loud burst of static, sharp enough to make me bleed from one ear. When I sat up in bed, my sheets were soaked in sweat. The bleeding was real. My pillow stained red. That morning, I found footprints. On the floor, bare, wet, leading from the hallway. Straight to the bed. I stopped going outside. Calls from work went unanswered. I boarded up the windows and covered the mirrors. I knew now. The radio wasn't the problem. It was just the door. The real threat was whatever had stepped through. Next night, the dream returned, but different, sharper, more vivid. I stood inside a recording booth, old-fashioned, all knobs and glass. Outside, in the mixing room, sat the man with the static face. This time, I could see behind him rows of microphones. And behind each one, a person, or something pretending to be a person. They were all strapped in chairs, eyes wide, mouths forced, open, voices spilling out of them, but the words weren't theirs. They were repeating phrases, old broadcasts, emergency warnings, war propaganda, lost phone calls. I realized what I was seeing. They weren't just dead. They were broadcasting, trapped, looping, part of the signal. One of the voices caught my attention. It was mine. From a voicemail I left Sarah years ago, the night after our worst fight. "I'm sorry," the recording repeated. "I didn't mean it like that. Just come home." Over and over. I screamed and punched the glass of the booth. No sound came out. The man outside turned toward me slowly, and this time he smiled. His mouth split wider than it should, cracking at the edges. "You're tuning in now." When I woke, I wasn't in my bed. I was on the kitchen floor, knees scraped, blood on my palms. The radio was there again, somehow whole, plugged in, but the cord wasn't connected to an outlet. It just trailed off into the floor. I stared at it for a long time, heart thudding, sweat trickling down my spine. Then it spoke. Not Sarah, not the static man, a child's voice. "Mr. Tom, do you want to play a game?" I backed away. My spine hit the counter. The voice giggled high-pitched and cruel. "I can see you when you sleep now." The dial turned on its own. The pointer moved .103.6 to 103.7. I didn't know it could move past that. It had always stopped at 103.6. Always. But the sound that came from 103.7 wasn't voices. It was breathing. Heavy. Wet. It sounded like something on the other side of the speaker was just inches away, sniffing me through the sound waves. Then a second voice broke through, fast and panicked. "Sarah. Tom, don't answer them. Don't follow." Her voice cut off mid-scream. And the breathing stopped. I lunged for the plug and ripped it out. Sparks flew. A smell of burning metal filled the air. For a moment, silence returned. But then, the lights in the house went out. And the last thing I saw before everything went black was a shape standing in the hallway. Not a shadow. Not a man. Something in between. Watching me. Listening. The next morning, I found claw marks on the inside of my closet door. Now, every time I close my eyes, I see the broadcast room, the microphones, the faces peeling back, the endless repetition. I'm beginning to understand the truth. This isn't a haunting. It's a signal. A dead frequency that doesn't just reach across the airwaves. It reaches across realities, and it's looking for listeners. They're not just speaking through the radio anymore. They're trying to come through. I boarded up the kitchen the next day. Not just the windows, everything. The cabinets, the drawers. I nailed the fridge shut, covered the floor with salt. I didn't even believe in Anything to stop whatever was bleeding through that thing. The radio sat there like a shrine, humming even without power, a barely audible vibration you felt more than heard. I hadn't turned it on since that last voice, since Sarah screamed. But it didn't matter anymore. I started hearing the static. Everywhere, in the toaster, in the pipes, even in my own chest, late at night, like a second heartbeat. Something had changed. It was no longer waiting for me to listen. It was trying to speak through everything. I first noticed it when the neighbor's dog went missing. Benny, a mutt who barked at every squirrel and leaf that passed, had vanished. His leash was snapped in two, like someone had yanked it with inhuman force. I went over to check on Old Man Rafferty, just across the woods. His house was quiet. Door slightly ajar. Inside. It smelled like copper and mold. The TV was on, turned to pure static. Every radio in the house clock radios, a battery-powered boombox, even an antique gramophone, was switched to 103.6 FM. All broadcasting static. All at once, the same whisper repeated again and again beneath the hiss. He's coming through. He's coming through. He's coming through. I backed out, heart hammering. But as I turned to leave, I saw the kitchen wall, scratched into the paint in long, uneven claw marks. I can see you from both sides now. That night, I didn't sleep. Couldn't. The house groaned like something alive. I moved all the furniture to barricade my bedroom door. But at 1:03 a.m., like clockwork, the static returned. Only this time, it wasn't from the radio. It came from inside the walls. I pressed my ear against the drywall and nearly screamed. On the other side, I could hear voices, dozens of them, chanting in unison. Open the signal. Open the signal. Open the signal. Something scratched from inside the wall. Dry. Aggressive. Like fingernails on concrete. A drywall began to buckle, swelling outward. A bulge in the shape of a face pressed forward, distorting the paint and plaster. The mouth opened, and I heard my name, not whispered, not spoken, screamed. I ran, locked myself in the basement. Down there, in the flickering bulb light, I finally put it together. This wasn't just about Sarah, or my grief, or my guilt. The voices had been using her, mimicking her, using her memory as bait. The frequency was a parasite, and I was the host it had latched onto. The more I listened, the deeper it reached into my world. And now, it was trying to be born. I didn't know what to do, so I did what felt logical in that twisted moment. I tried to broadcast back. I had an old hand radio set up from my youth, stored in a crate in the basement. I hooked it up, aligned it with the broadcast frequency as best I could, and hit the transmit button. And I spoke. If you can hear this, if anyone out there is listening, turn off your radios. Don't tune in. Block the signal. Bury it. But my voice didn't echo through the static. Instead, a reply came through instantly. My own voice, played back to me, warped, reversed. And then, you're already part of the transmission. The lights exploded. Glass rained down. The air went thick and buzzing like a live wire. And for the first time I saw it, not the radio, not the voices. Him, the broadcaster. A tall, impossibly thin figure made of writhing static and flickering light, like his body was composed of frequencies. His face was a void shifting symbols and numbers burned into blackness, cycling too fast to read. Where his eyes should have been, two dials spun constantly, searching. He didn't speak with a mouth. He broadcasted directly into my mind. The more you remember her, the louder we become. I fell to the ground, convulsing, ears ringing with screeches from 1,000 radios all at once. My vision blurred into white, and for a split second, I was back in the broadcast room. Only now, I wasn't behind the glass. I was in the chair, microphone in front of me, strapped in, mouth open. And somewhere deep in the blackness beyond the studio glass, someone was listening. I woke up in my driveway, naked, bleeding, the stars above me pulsing to the rhythm of a signal I couldn't unhear. Inside the house, every device with a speaker, TV, phone, radio, even the microwave had turned itself on, each one repeating the same word: transmit, transmit, transmit. I packed what I could, drove until the static faded from the sky. I stayed in motels without power, avoided anything that could pick up signal. For weeks, I stayed dark. And then, this morning, in a coffee shop, in a small town 2 states away, I heard it again. From the corner, a dusty tabletop radio playing old jazz. The music crackled, and then, my voice, they're coming through. This isn't just happening to me. The frequency is spreading. It rides on grief, on memory, on regret. If you've ever turned on a radio late at night and heard something that felt too close, too personal, too impossible, you're not crazy. You're just tuning in. If you're hearing this story, it's already too late. They say there's a moment right before death where you see your whole life flash before your eyes. But that's not true. At least, not for me. What I saw was a dial, turning slowly, locked on 103.6. And through that final, widening signal, something stepped through. I'm recording this now from a place I don't understand. It's not a basement, not a radio station, not even a dream. It's the broadcast room. But this time, it isn't just mine. It's yours too. I'll explain, but you need to listen carefully. You need to remember every word. The last time I tried to run, I drove west until the roads ran out. Stayed in a shack with no power, no electronics. I ripped the speaker out of my truck. I sealed my ears with wax at night. For 2 weeks, it was quiet. And then, the dreams came back, but not mine. Other people's. Memories that didn't belong to me. Hospital beds, burning cars, a girl in a red coat lost in a blizzard. Every night I wandered through someone else's grief, their voice calling out for someone they'd lost. And always, at the center of the dream, the radio, waiting, dial fixed at 103.6. Then, last week, I found a cassette on my pillow, unmarked, still warm. I didn't own a cassette player, but I knew what would happen when I touched it. I played it anyway. It wasn't a voice. Not at first. It was a tone, a piercing, layered sound that made my teeth hurt. The kind you don't hear with your ears, but feel in your bones. Then the voice came, not Sarah, not the broadcaster, not anyone. It was me, but older, cracked, broken, and I was saying, they can't cross over until someone finishes the broadcast. I dropped the tape, but the voice kept playing. Once you transmit it to someone else, you're free. That's when I realized the truth. This entire story is the transmission. Every time I tell it, every time you hear it, it moves. It grows. It spreads. The broadcaster isn't a ghost. It's not even a demon. It's a signal. A cursed waveform that feeds on memory, voice, and trauma, particularly grief. The rawer it is, the cleaner the frequency. That's why it came through. Sarah. She was the strongest memory I had. But now that I've shared the story, told you about the flea market, the voices, the broadcast room, it's inside you now. If you're hearing this, you're a receiver, and that whisper you'll hear tonight, somewhere in the white noise of your TV, your headphones, your car stereo, it'll say your name, softly. At first. Maybe it'll sound like someone you've lost, someone you wish you could talk to again. Don't listen. No matter how much it sounds like them. Don't answer, because the moment you do, You'll open the signal, and they will know there is no running anymore. I'm finishing the transmission now. They promised me that if I reached enough of you, if I told the story, I'd be set free, that I wouldn't hear the voice again. But they lied, because I just heard it again right now. Right behind me, Dot, and this time, it's not on the radio, Dot, so here it is. The final warning. The last broadcast, Dot, turn off the signal before it turns you on. Shak.